That's weird. There we go. Now I'm ready. Sorry about that. I'm ready.
All right. Give me. All right, we are going now. Hey everybody, welcome to Kicking It with the KTrain, where I chat with people who have helped me keep an eye on my vision. And I am pretty pumped and excited to chat with this guy today. It's been a while since we've talked, over the phone or in person. But this guy has been, if you live anywhere close to Jacksonville, Florida, and are a sports fan, you know this guy's voice, you know his name, and this guy has been, he may not know it, but is a pretty big influence in my life since I was a little kid and a little sports fan. So I'm really excited and pleased to welcome Frangie to the show. Frank, welcome to the show.
Kyle, great to be here. Thank you for thinking of me and having me on and for those kind comments. I think I've known you since you were 12, maybe 11, 12. And it's an honor to be on here with you. I appreciate all you're doing and happy to be here, man.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I was thinking this morning, and it's crazy that like I used to call your show as like this little sixth, seventh grade kid, just wanting to talk football and baseball, and you were always willing and open to just chatting with, with anyone that called into your show. So it was cool, and that I just I think back to those days, and I now think of I still listen to your show, even though I'm based out in Colorado now, just with the beauties of technology. So yeah, no, it's been cool following Jacksonville sports, even from afar.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I've done this show. It's kind of funny. I've done the radio show since 1988. Think about that. And that's really when sports radio started. Sports radio kind of came about in '87. The Fan in New York City was the first all sports radio station.
Mhm.
And then by '91, we here in Jacksonville, we had a station that was the ninth all sports station in the country. And now there's, gosh, hundreds and thousands of them. So it was kind of fun. So I've done it a long time, as you know. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, so kind of walk us through the arc of that career. I mean, so like you started your sports radio career in 1988, but you know how did you kind of get into the sports media field?
Yeah.
Like, were you an athlete and just didn't make it? Like, kind of tell us that story a little bit.
Yeah, I was always around sports. I was a baseball player. I tried to walk on at the University of Florida, didn't make that team, but I love sports all my life. I always wanted to be a sports writer. I knew that when I was a kid, Kyle. I was destined to be a sports writer. I pursued that in school, got a journalism degree, graduated from the University of Florida in 1980.
Mhm.
Became a sports writer right away. Then in 1988 or 87, as I said a minute ago, sports radio came along, and the guy asked me, "Look, you want to do both? Be a sports writer?" And sports radio hadn't evolved enough that people didn't know who the hosts were going to be, where
Right.
they're going to be. There weren't a lot of college curriculums that geared people toward it. So they got some TV guys and some newspaper guys and some sports writers, and we became the talent on sports radio. So I started that in '88, and I really liked it. I really liked it more than sports writing. So in '92, for '88 through '91, '92, I was doing both. So in '92, I said, you know what? I think it'd be more lucrative, it'd be more fun, it would fit me more just to be a sports talk host. Sports talk was starting to blow up a little bit. So in March of '93, I left the newspaper business after being in it for like 12 years and did just radio. And so I've been doing radio ever since. I've been doing radio in Jacksonville. This will August 1st will mark 35 years that I've done radio in the afternoon in Jacksonville. So yeah, I've done this a
Wow.
long time, and it started with sports writing, and it's been radio and a little bit of TV ever since.
Yeah, yeah. So I I was actually thinking about this. So I mean, like you said, you've been in sports radio, sports, for 35 plus years now, and like you've always been local to Jacksonville. Like, I mean, you've dabbled a little bit here and there with things like national radio broadcasts and all that. But like, did you ever get the itch to try and like go completely exclusively national, or why remain local?
I think I did national games of the week in college football from '07 through 13. So that's 7 year stretch. I think sports radio is a local thing. Uh, Television, maybe not as much. It can be local, but local television, local sports television is kind of drying up a little bit. John Wortham from Sports Illustrated wrote a great column a couple weeks ago, "The Death of the Local Sports Anchor," which there's a lot of truth to it. That job's
Mhm.
evolved and changed. But I think sports radio is always going to be local. I think, Sirius XM and digital radio and satellite radio is changing a lot in the radio industry. Local radio stations are having a tougher time because satellite radio can play the same songs. But satellite radio can't ever replace us, because if you want to get in your car after a long day work at 5 o'clock or whenever, and you want to hear somebody talking about the Jaguars, that's not on satellite radio. They may be talking about the NFL. They may be talking about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but they're not talking about the Jaguars. And so I think the local following of sports fans will always match up well. And I felt that all along, Kyle. I thought radio was always going to be a local medium. Sports radio is always going to be a local medium. And it's proved out. And even now in the podcast world, in the digital world, in the social media world, I still think that guy that hops in his car after a long day of work wants to turn on that radio and hear somebody local talk about the local team. And that's really fueled us for all these years. It really has.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I and you live it, which is really really awesome. I mean, and honestly, I'm living proof of it. Like I grew up in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's still my hometown. And you guys launched 1010XL in, I think it was 2007.
That was seven, right?
Yeah, and like I've been a loyal listener, and like it tore me up when I moved away from Jacksonville, because I thought I was never going to be able to listen to my favorite sports talk radio ever again. But then, like with the creation of online streaming and all all this different stuff, I can now listen to you guys, and I feel like I'm back home listening to sports radio, which is exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, the cool thing about the technology is now it's not just for Jacksonville people who live in Jacksonville, and that is a great thing. And I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, so now I can follow talk shows out of Pittsburgh that talk Pirates baseball. So,
yep.
But I still think that it's either local for the people that live here, or like you, Kyle, people that have lived here, people
Yep.
that are from here. And so, yeah, that makes it a lot of fun. And certainly, look, it's more fun now because it looks like we might be pretty good. I've been the voice of the This will be my 10th year calling Jaguars games, and only the second time last year, only second time we were pretty good. So,
Yep.
the timing's pretty good too.
It really is, and that actually leads into my next question. I mean, you've been the voice of the Jaguars now for this will be year number 10, and I remember, I think it was it was 2013, 2014. I had been away from Jacksonville for a while, and I was living in Orlando, and I turned on a radio, and I desperately wanted to find the Jags game. I wanted to find the play-by-play, and I found the play-by-play, and I don't hear Brian Sexton on the radio, and I'm like, who's this guy? And then it takes me like 10 seconds, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Frangie. Yeah. Did Frank become the voice of the Jaguars? So what does being the voice of the Jaguars entail? And like, that had to be a challenge, taking that on after so many years of one guy being the voice, and now you're the voice, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. There's a lot to unpack in what you just asked. Number one, Brian did a wonderful job. He was the voice of the Jags for 19 years. He's a great friend. I've told this story many times. The Jags were ready to move on to the next guy. I don't think that's anything Brian did wrong. It was just time for the next guy. And when they came to our radio station, I became that next guy. When it was announced, the first phone call I got was from Brian. I picked up the phone. I've told this story many times, Kyle. I picked up the phone, and Brian said, or I listened to the voicemail, and Brian said, listen, I just want you to know we're good. He said, when it's time for the next guy, I'm glad you're the next guy. If someone had to be it, I don't want there to be any awkwardness between us. We've been friends. I respect what you've done. It was the best. It broke not that we needed to break the ice, because Brian and I have been friends a long time, but it was perfect. And I called him back and said, you are such a stand-up guy, and we've been friends, and he's done a great job in their digital piece. He still works for the Jags, and Brian does a wonderful job, and I've got great respect for him. And I mean that very sincerely. As for me, it's the most important assignment of my career. I mean, it's your Jaguar fans care. There's no hockey here. There's no baseball here. There's no NBA here. We have one team, and it's my
Yep.
hometown. And to be the voice that tells the story of every play, of every game, of every moment is important. It's an important assignment, and I take it very seriously. And I mean that when I say that, Kyle. It is the most important assignment of my professional career. It's an honor and it's a privilege to walk into that booth every day. Like I said, it's about to be my 10th year doing it, and I can't wait for the next game. I'm always the guy that can't wait for the next game. So it's a big deal. It's an important deal. We've grown as we've done it. I've had the same two color guys the whole time. Tony Baselli just went into the Hall, and Jeff Loggeman, 2 first-round draft picks, and they're great to work with. They're smart. They're accommodating. It's been a fun team, and we've been able to grow that team, and it's a very important deal, and I never take it lightly. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you, like, I mean, even today, like, I've always preferred the radio broadcast over, everyone always asks me, oh, I like, watch the television broadcast. I'm like, no, like radio for me in particular paints that picture. Me not being able to see the field, me not being able to see the plays. The way you and Tony and Jeff, work together and describe everything that's going on the field, and you break it down in such a intricate way, like that matters to me personally. So like, just like I said, keep up the great work there, because you're definitely, you guys are my eyes on, when I'm just enjoying my Jags, going on to win games, and hopefully win a lot more games, and hopefully a Super Bowl here not too long.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I'll tell you what, that's the best compliment I can be paid is from you, who relies on us, and I get that, and our job is to paint the picture for someone who's not watching or can't watch, and I appreciate your comments. That means a lot to me, because again, that's what we're trying to do, and we don't always get it right, and we don't always do it perfectly, but we certainly hope we can create that picture and paint that picture for fans who listen on the radio. So that was very kind of you. I appreciate that very much. I mean that.
No, I appreciate what you do, and in that vein, like you said, you don't always do it perfectly, but you are a member of, a prominent member of the public media, the landscape. Do you does it, has it, or does it still make you nervous putting your opinions out there for public consumption? I mean, today sometimes it could be a little volatile out there. Yeah. And like, how do you deal with that pressure to perform going on radio, whether it's whether it's the talk show every day, or whether it's going into the booth to call a game?
Yeah, there's different paradigms. The first question you asked is an interesting one, because I get asked a lot. You're a talk show host who is supposed to give opinions, and it can be cutting hard opinions. Yet you're also kind of work for the team. So how do you criticize a team that pays you? And that's a fair question.
Yeah.
There's a number of answers to that. Number one, Kyle, I think I got the job in part because I'm not particularly caustic anyway. You've listened to the show forever. Well before I was called Jags. I'm not a cheap shot artist. I'm not caustic. I'm not looking for clicks or listens by being bombastic. It's never been my style. I try to be reasonable and fair, and I've always been that guy. So I think that helped. Secondly, I'll give Mark Lamping, the president of the team, credit. When those rights came to 1010XL, which is when I became the play-by-play voice, the one thing he said to us, he said, look, we don't want to change who you guys are. Just because you're now our rights holder doesn't mean you can't be critical of us. We want you to be fair and honest, but if we're doing something badly, it's your job to say we're doing it badly, because that's what talk show hosts do. So I think the team had made it very clear. Now, again, I'm not ever going to be a cheap shot artist, whether I was calling the games or not. But I think the team was very fair about that. So in terms of pressure to not criticize the team, I'm the same guy I was before I had the game. As for the pressure of doing it, listen, if you're not a little bit nervous, baseball players say it all the time. They're a little bit nervous every time they come to bat. A golfer's nervous every time he tees off. If you don't feel some of that, well, then you're probably not good. Everybody should feel not tension or pressure, but a little bit of butterflies before you do something that's important. And we have a very front-facing position. There's 32 of me in the world. Think about that. The NFL is the biggest sports entity in this country, one of the bigger ones in the world. And there's 32 of us in the world that have the honor and privilege of doing this. And I never lose sight of that. So I'm excited every time I go into that booth. I can tell you that.
Wow. Yeah. No, you nailed exactly what I always, I mean, your response is pretty much exactly what I say, because people always ask me like, man, don't you get nervous, towing the start line of a Paralympic Games or World Championships or anything like that? And I'm like, oh, of course I do. Like,
Right.
of course, because like if you don't have a little bit of nerves, number one, you're, like you said, you're probably not good, or number two, like, you don't, do you care? And like, I
Right.
care about my performance, and you obviously care about yours as well, which is cool. And I like hearing that.
Yeah, it's
So
a lot of fun. And I'll say this too. And probably with you, when you get ready to start a race, same with me, Kyle, when I've done it 1,000 times, but when that producer says, okay, we're on in 30, and they give it to me at the top of the broadcast, and we're ready to go here. All the pregame's over. The teams are lining up. It's Jags and Chiefs. And yeah, there's some good butterflies there. I don't want to mess up the open. I want to find that rhythm. In broadcast, you have to find a rhythm. At some point, between the time you start the open and we're playing, you have to find that rhythm. And the sooner you find that rhythm, the better it is. It's a lot of fun.
that's awesome. I mean, just a couple, just a couple more, questions here. I know you're crazy busy, but do you have a favorite, or like a coolest sports event or memory that you've either attended or covered?
I got to tell you, this is a different answer than I answered that question 6 months ago or a year
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was the most improbable year I've ever seen, Kyle. If you
Yeah.
think about this for a second, think about this. If you were writing a movie script and you
Yep.
were turning it into the studio to get approved, and it was like for Remember the Titans or Hoosiers or Rudy, right? And you
Yep.
said, okay, the team's going to start out 3-7, be right up against it, but then start winning games. And they're going to be down 3 touchdowns to the Cowboys, but they're going to come back and win on a pick six in overtime. And 2 touchdowns to the Ravens, but they're going to score a late touchdown and win on a 2-point conversion. And they're going to get outplayed by the Titans at home, their chief nemesis, but somehow pick up a fumble and run it in to win the game. And then they're going to go to the playoffs for the first time in forever and be down 27-0 and miraculously come back and win the game on a field goal at the end of the game. If you'd have turned that script, the studio would have rejected it. The studio would have said, that's too unrealistic. It can't really happen. But that's what happened. So
Yep.
I would say last year's finish, the Chargers game down 27-0 in the playoffs, and the call and the honor to make that call at the end of the game when Patterson made the kick, that probably is the shining moment of the broadcast stuff I've done. I'm blessed to have had a lot of it. I'm very blessed. But that's probably the one that one will resonate for a long, that group of games highlighted by that Chargers game will resonate with me for a long time.
I got I still get chills when I listen back to to that call that you made. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard, and I've listened to a lot of sports on radio. I mean, I've listened to some of the greats, from Mick Hubert to yourself, and that call when Patterson made that kick was unbelievable. Gave me chills up and down my spine. Like, it was incredible. So how did you just kind of live it in the moment at that time?
It's funny. You're coming back, and we'd had a bunch of fun calls already, the Dallas and the Ravens and the Titans game, but you never want to blow the big call. That's one thing any play-by-play guy will tell you. No matter how much you do for that 3.5 hours, you're measured by the big call. And so you knew it was coming down to it. You knew it was going to be a field goal. The first thing is you got to be accurate. Make sure the listener knows, back to what we talked about earlier, painting the picture. Make sure you're accurate. Make sure that you got the right hash mark, the right line of scrimmage, how long the field goal is going to be, who's the holder, who's the kicker, what's the circumstance, how much time, what's the significance of it. Obviously, the significance of this one was you make the kick, you win the game, and you move on. So yep. I think the first thing is make really sure you're crisp, you're on point, and you've accurately told the story. I think that's chapter 1, right? The next thing is just be yourself. Once you've been accurate, once you know you've told a story, once you say the snap to Logan Cook puts it down, Patterson kicks it up, at that point you can lose your mind. At that point you've done the pre-work, if you will. And then when the kid goes in, then that's just reflex, man. You just start screaming and yelling and go back and listen to it later and hope you didn't sound like a fool. That's what you do. I can tell you that. So it was a be accurate and crisp, and then have fun and be yourself when the moment happens. And I think that's what happened on that kick.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. So as a, as a member of the, public eye, you have just a tremendous opportunity, to do, good in the world, to give back. And I know that there are several causes that are pretty near and dear to your heart. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, the big one's walk-off charities, Kyle, and that's a big deal to me. I'm a baseball nut, right?
Yep.
I'm a big baseball fan, and I love baseball. When I grew up, baseball was very diverse. In the 70s, I think the best players that we all followed were African American men. Hank
Yep.
Aaron and Willie McCovey and Willie Mays and Joe Morgan and Bob Gibson, and I could go on and on. In
Yep.
the 70s, 27% of Major League Baseball players were African American. That's not Dominican or Puerto Rican. It's black men born in America. Right
Yep.
now, that number is about 6%. It's become an expensive game. It's become an exclusive game. And the truth is, children in the inner city, children in underserved areas just can't play anymore. It's too expensive. Mm-hmm. So baseball has lost its diversity. And I said, what if we, and because I love baseball so much, and it's near and dear to my heart, what if we put together a charity that helped everybody play? And that's what we've tried to do. We've raised a bunch of money. We go to the inner city. We build we have clinics. We build leagues. And any kid that wants to play on a Little League baseball team, because I think every kid should have an opportunity to do that. So every kid that wants to play on a Little League baseball team gets the opportunity to play. And we're excited about that. We've put 6,000 kids through in 6 years now, 6,000 kids have come through our program. We have an opening day coming up this Saturday, as a matter of fact, where probably 600, 700 kids will all play, 47 teams. It's exciting. And we're letting kids who ordinarily couldn't have played baseball, never been on a baseball team, play Little League baseball. And it's a big deal to me. And that's the one we're really involved in. And it's very near and dear to my heart, Kyle. I can promise you that.
That's awesome. And how can, if people want to find out more about walk-off charities, like where can they go find out about it, and how can they help support?
Well, thank you for asking that. It's walkoffcharities.com. There's a donation button. There's a history. It tells you all about what we are. It tells you about the kids we've been able to affect and the difference it's made in their lives. And if anybody wants to just go to walkoffcharities.com, you can learn all about it. And no matter where you are, you can certainly affect a lot of children's lives. The gloves cost $6. So now we give every kid a glove, and we ship them. We buy them in bulk, but it costs about $100 for a kid to play a season. That's uniforms, umpires, cleats, equipment, and the glove part of it costs. We buy them for $6. So $100 puts a kid on the field, and anybody that wants to contribute to that can do it right there on walkoffcharities.com.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, and I think anything that gets kids involved in sport is awesome. I'm sport has been such an integral part of my life. I went the non-traditional sport route. Unfortunately, right. They don't like totally blind kids. Throwing a baseball on a pitcher's mound, but
I get it. Totally get it.
But yeah, no. So I just like you, I mean, I love baseball. It's a statistics game, and that's where I found my love of sports and statistics, and through guys like you painting the picture, through just listening to your show, listening to all the shows on 1010XL over the years. It's helped me out tremendously, and I get I actually get the comment when I'm on the receiving end of interviews, when I'm in the interviewees or chair, people are like, man, you're an easy interview. I'm like, well, I listened to a lot of sports talk radio growing up.
well, I hear you. And Kyle, let me say this too. You're an inspiration. I've known you since you were a little kid, but what you're able to do is an inspiration. I know you hear that all the time, so I'm kind of getting in line to tell you that. but it's the coolest thing ever. And you haven't let anything hold you back, whether it's a podcast or whether it's winning an athletic event. It's the coolest thing ever. Again, I've known you since you were a little kid, but I've told your dad that 1,000 times. I'll tell that to you now. It's big stuff what you're doing. I really mean that.
Thank you so much, Frank, and I really appreciate that and everything that you do. So, just one final thing. I mean, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the station?
It's funny. I'm 64. I'll be 65 in the fall. I don't know how I got so old, by the way. I tell everybody I'm a young 64 because doesn't everybody think they're a young whatever? So we're all saying that.
100%.
Nothing's changing here. I want to do this again. It's the greatest honor of my career to call these Jags games. It's my 35th year in radio. I hope one day I'll walk away and go do other fun stuff. But we travel a lot in the summer. My wife and I do. We get all over the country. In fact, we're coming to Colorado. As a matter of fact, they're going to see Red Rocks for the first time.
Oh, awesome!
This spring and summer, yeah. But no, for us, hopefully what's next is the Jags are good for a while. Doug Peterson's a really good coach, very respected. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to be that generational quarterback, Kyle, that everybody thought he would be and hoped he would be. So I'm hoping there's more playoff runs. And we haven't had much success since I've been doing this. We were good in 17. That wasn't sustainable. We were good last year. I think it is sustainable. I think when you have one thing we've learned about the National Football League, when you have coach and quarterback figured out, whether it's Belichick and Brady or Andy Reid and Mahomes or Sean Payton and Drew Brees or Tony Dungy and Peyton Manning, when you get those two pieces right, you go to a lot of playoff games and you probably get to some Super Bowls and you might even win a few. And I think that's what's happened here. They've got those two pieces right. Now, there's far more that goes into it, but when you get coach and quarterback right, you have a good run. And I think the Jags are poised for that. So radio station will keep doing what we do, and hopefully the Jags will keep doing what they do. And I can promise you, Kyle, I'm going to keep doing what I do.
Awesome. I love it, Frank. And man, just thank you so much for your time, especially today, but, thanks for showing up every day on radio and, giving us some good old sports infotainment as I've heard it referenced on the station several times. So thank you so much, Frank. And
okay, Kyle, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for thinking of me.
Have a good one. Take care, man. And that brings us to another end of Kicking It with the KTrain. I think you can tell that Frank Frangie has helped me keep an eye on my vision, and give him a listen on 1010XL, and listen to some Jags games if you're in Jacksonville or across the country, and you'll understand why he has helped me keep an eye on my vision, and maybe he'll help you keep an eye on yours. So take care, everyone, and keep an eye on your vision.
Kyle, that was great, man. Thank you.